Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Venus and today I'm going over the 12 books that I read in the month of July. Finally got out of my June reading slump. I read fantasy, a classic fantasy, some romance, some thrillers, a new release by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and of course the much talked about book House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. So let's see what I thought about these books. So I had COVID in the month of July. It was not fun, but on the plus side, I was able to read quite a few books laying in bed for 4 or 5 days. So I'm gonna go in the order that I read the books in July. I normally go from my least favorite to my most favorite, but we're gonna switch it up. I'm gonna go from just the order that I read them. Let me know if you care, if it matters, and we'll see how this goes. So the first book that I read in the month of July is The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. This is my first time reading this book. I've seen the movies so many times. I can't even count how many times I've seen the movies. I love them so much. They're definitely one of my favorite movies of all time. So I thought it was only fitting to finally get to read the fantasy book that is pretty much a waymaker for all of the fantasy books that are out now. So I did do the audiobook of this. Andy Serkis's narration. For those that don't know, he plays Gollum in the movies. He did a fantastic job with The Hobbit, so I couldn't wait to start these when I found out that he was also the narrator for these. I enjoyed it. I think a lot of my enjoyment was because I've been such a huge fan of the movies. I didn't enjoy this as much as I enjoyed The Hobbit. I feel like there were definitely some parts that were pretty slower, a lot of singing hobbits, and I can't remember if the elves were singing, but there's a lot of like breakaway for songs in this book that kind of slowed down the pacing a little bit for me. I'm not going to go too much into what this book is about. It's a classic, movies are out about it, but I will say my favorite part about this is definitely the relationship between Frodo and Sam. The loyalty that Sam shows Frodo is just unparalleled. I loved hearing Andy Serkis doing his Mr. Frodo lines for Sam. I thought it was great. And Sam is just such a loyal friend. I can't wait to watch this relationship continue throughout the rest of the books. You know, he was like, I'm gonna follow you wherever you go. I don't really know much about where you're going, but as long as I get to see elves and I'm with you, hey, it's fine. I don't mind leaving the Shire. So I just really love those interactions, and you know, just there's so many good things about this. So and I say all that to say I did give this 4 stars. So I'm definitely gonna finish these books through audiobook, you know, narrated by Andy Serkis, but I know eventually one day I am going to want to go back to these and actually physically read them. I feel like I'm going to get a lot more of that world and understanding the kind of journey that they're going through, digging deeper into the text in J.R.R. Tolkien's writing, because it's definitely different. I will say there's a character in this book named Tom Bombadil, and I'm pretty sure he's not in the movies. Don't remember him being in the movies. And Andy Serkis's narration of this character's voice is so entertaining. I was like, are we like, where are we at? Is this like, I didn't know. It just got really interesting. That is just very interesting chapter, and he's a very interesting character. That's all I'm going to say about that. But yeah, I will never forget Tom Bombadil, done by Andy Serkis, because it was brilliant. But yeah, 4 stars, definitely recommended, especially if you're a fantasy reader, and most definitely if you've seen the movies. Absolutely, because you have such a huge already world set up in your brain, and the characters, and you know how they sound and everything. So I definitely think, I don't think it's a hindrance at all. I think it makes you love the story even more. If you have not read them, it might take you a little bit to get into it. Certain parts may be more enjoyable than others, but overall, I definitely recommend it. Absolutely. Love this. Can't wait to read the second one. So the next 3 books, I'm kind of gonna group them together. They're all written by Hazlewood. They're novellas, actually, and definitely read these while I had COVID. I just banged these out, I think, in like a day. I think I went through these in a day. They're like over 100 pages. They were All really, really cute. So Allie Hazlewood is the author of the book Love Hypothesis. That was a huge romance book that came out last year. I really enjoyed it. The characters all work in the STEM field, so there's engineers and scientists. So the first book of these 3 novellas was Under One Roof, and this one centers around Mara, who is an environmental engineer, and her mentor has just passed away and left her half of her home. And this is like a perfect place for Mara. It's really close to her job. She's been there before, thinks it's beautiful, and she's really excited to move in. So when she gets there, she finds out that her mentor's nephew, Liam, is also living there. He is a lawyer, literally, of a company that is the exact opposite of environmental friendly. So immediately they butt heads. Of course, we know where this is going. Mara is not gonna, she's determined to live there, so they live there, they're roommates, and enemies to lovers. It was cute, it was quick, a fun romance. I don't know, not much depth, but it was enjoyable. It made me feel better during my COVID. I gave that novella 3 stars. The second novella is Stuck With You, and this book centers around Sadie, who is a civil engineer, and the male love interest is Eric, and he's like her work nemesis. They did date very, very briefly, or had like I almost want to say, I think it was like a one-night stand. And there was, of course, some miscommunication afterwards, so they didn't talk, and now all of a sudden they're stuck in an elevator together. So, of course, as things unravel in the elevator, they understand what happened and why this miscommunication happened. It was okay. I don't know. I think this one was my least favorite out of all of them. So Second Chance Love, of course, they make up. So, not a spoiler, but that one was okay. Not much to say about it. And the third one is called Below Zero, and this one centers around Hannah. She is an aerospace engineer, which I actually really enjoyed because it was really cool hearing her talk about NASA and working there. But it starts out with she's really kind of undecided on what she wants to do with her life, and one of her friend's relatives, Ian, works for NASA, so she goes on a little coffee date to interview him, and she's super attracted to him, and an encounter happens, and Ian is like, no, I really kind of am interested in women that want to pursue kind of a longer term relationship. So they don't talk after that. Of course, then Hannah does decide to go and work for NASA, so she sees Ian on the first day there, and as she's working there, Hannah comes up with this expedition that she wants to do, and Ian vetoes it, doesn't think that it's very safe expedition. She gets really upset, and somehow there's a loophole, and she's able to go ahead and do this expedition. It's in the Arctic, and of course she does end up in a dangerous situation, and the only person that's willing to help her is Ian. So Ian comes to her rescue, and it goes from there, and it's cute. Another just cute novella. So I gave this one 3.5 stars because I did enjoy this one more than the other 2. So that's it for those. So the next book that I read was Namesake by Adrienne Young. This is the second book in a duology. The first one was Fable. This one was a little bit of a letdown for me. I really, really enjoyed Fable. It's kind of like a young adult fantasy set on the sea. Fable, in the first book, very strong female character. Her mom dies, and then her father kind of leaves her on this island to fend for herself. She is able to fend for herself because her mother kind of left her, or she, inherited these kind of gifts where she can sense certain objects under the water. So scavenging under the water, which is kind of how she makes her living. And she really just wants to get back to the town that she comes from and find her father, show him that she's strong enough to make her way and get back. She wants to be a part of a crew on a ship, and she is able to do that. And then at the end of the first book, of course, there's some conflict, and she is separated from her crew. So that it picks up, Namesake picks up from there. There is a romance in these books as well that I just felt like I liked a lot more in the first book and didn't really care for it too much in the second book. I don't know, this one was just a little bit more boring for me, the direction that it went into. So, it was okay. I give it 3 stars. I don't think that I would ever reread these books though. So That's all I gotta say about that. The next book that I read is Malice, the first book in the Faithful and the Fallen series by Gwynne, and I absolutely loved it. This is the kind of fantasy that I crave. I love those epic fantasies with a lot of characters, because this book has a lot of characters, just an epic world and kind of like a chosen one trope and the good versus evil trope. So I very, very much enjoyed this one. There's a giant in it, giants in it, giant worms. It has all the things. So again, this book is a multi-POV, which I didn't mind too much. There was definitely some characters that were way more developed than other characters. Actually, I remember there are 2 characters that were so similar in personalities that I kept getting confused with their storylines. I was like, wait, what were they doing? I don't remember. There's certain fantasy books that when I first start them, I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I don't understand any of this, and it takes like 20 or 30 pages to kind of like, you know, even sometimes even more than that, to just kind of get the flow of the world and the magic and the people and all of that. But I have not had that experience at all with Gwynne's books. They're really easy to follow. I felt like the pacing was great with this. The storyline, you're definitely in the beginning kind of getting to know each character, the different areas in the Banished Lands and the different like people that rule over them, and kind of just how everything is working within this world. There is an animal companion in this book. That's all I'm gonna say. And I loved him. So there's definitely fighting in this book. There's some bullies in this, like children bullies and adult bullies that are like, will get you like very frustrated and angry, but Gwynne handles it fantastically. I really enjoyed it. So I absolutely recommend this book, especially if you love fantasy. It's great. I can't wait to continue on in this series. Valor is on my August, is it August? Yeah. Valor is on my August TBR, so I'm hoping to get to it soon. I gave this 4 stars. Next book that I read was a memoir, and that is Viola Davis's Finding Me, and it was fantastic. I gave it 5 stars. I loved learning about her journey from her childhood up to present, and she had a very, very difficult childhood, lived in poverty, there was domestic abuse, sexual abuse, just a lot of really hard things to go through. I just loved learning about her journey and how hard it is and how much she overcame to be this like incredible woman that she is today. I'm a huge fan of hers, and I just thought it was a fantastic memoir, and definitely cried quite a few times reading it. Some parts really hit home. So yeah, I really recommend this book, especially if you like memoirs. It's beautiful, and the audiobook was fantastic. She narrates it herself, and I got through it in 1 day. Absolutely amazing, so highly recommend. So the next few books, I'm just gonna give the title and the author and their ratings, because I did go into detail about these in my Summerween reading vlog, which I will link up above. So I did have one DNF for that reading vlog, and it was Kill River by Cameron Rubik. It was a slasher book, just didn't like that it took over 100 pages to even get into anything gory, and the main characters were like 13 and 14 years old, which I just thought was weird. Next book was Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes. I gave this one 3 stars. And the next book was The Carol Haunt by Darcy Coates. I think in the vlog I gave it 3 stars, but I'm actually going to give it 3.5 stars, because I did overall enjoy this one. So yep. So yes, 3.5 stars for this one. And the last one I read for that vlog is The Book of Cold Cases by Simone St. James. My first book by her. I really enjoyed it. It would have been a 4-star read if the twist didn't involve one of my least favorite tropes. I don't want to say what it is because I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but yeah, this one, 3.5 stars. The next book that I read was a NetGalley ARC that I received, and that is Carrie, Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I loved this book. So I have read other books by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I've read The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, Daisy Jones and the Six, and Malibu Rising. I did not like Malibu Rising at all. I gave it 2 stars. I just thought it was really boring. But Daisy Jones and the Six and The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, I gave them both, I don't remember if it was 4 or 5 stars. So Carrie, Soto is Back is about a tennis player named Carrie Soto. She is a world-renowned tennis player. Has all of these records. I will say this book very much centers around tennis. I am 100% not a tennis fan at all. Yes, my name is Venus, but I was born before Venus Williams, so no, I was not named after her. I get that question all the time, and no, I was not. I am not a fan of tennis at all, so I was a little leery going into this book, very much so. I was like, man, I don't think I'm gonna like this, because it's a lot of tennis lingo, a lot of like action on the courts, and it did not bother me at all, because the story, the heart of the story, was so good. So in this book, it starts off with Carrie Soto. She is retired. I think it's been about 6 years since she's retired. So it's been about 6 years since she's retired. She has all these records, and she is at a U.S. Open. She's at a U.S. Open watching a match, and the woman playing beats her record. She gets into this mindset where she's like, no, I want to keep my record. So she comes out of retirement, and then the story kind of jumps into where she started and kind of her training and how she won all the awards and how she treated people through that. And her father is her coach throughout most of her life. And it is a story, not only like a beautiful father and daughter story. Taylor Jenkins Reid just has a great way. Like, her writing is just so beautiful. There were moments with Carrie and her father that were so touching. Her father had so many like amazing like life lessons that he was teaching her that I feel like were so like, how many times can I say like, that were so relatable. Carrie's character arc was just very well developed. I really enjoyed it. There was times when you really don't like Carrie. She's even called a bitch in the book by fans, because that's just like what her attitude is. But she's such an amazing athlete, and her will and her drive and her determination, it's very motivating. I don't know. I love this book. I thought it was fantastic. There are a few references to Daisy Jones. I think it was like one reference to Daisy Jones and the Six, and a tiny bit of a, I want to say like, almost like a crossover with Malibu Rising that I thought was interesting. Yeah, so this book comes out on August 30th. I highly recommend it, especially if you've enjoyed other books by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Don't let the fact that it centers around tennis dissuade you from reading it. Because it was great, and I am not a tennis fan at all, so highly recommend that book. The last book that I read was The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager, and I'm smiling because my opinion of this book is pretty much the complete opposite from most of the reviews that I read. People have been completely like ripping him a new one for this book, and I absolutely loved it. I gave it, I don't even know if I want, it's going to be between 4 and 5 stars. I haven't decided yet, but I really enjoyed this book. I am not going to talk too much about it, because the best thing that you can do if you're a Riley Sager fan, even though all the reviews are crazy and all over the place and people are just like ripping him apart, do not go into it knowing anything, because you will completely destroy any like surprise that, you know, you could potentially enjoy like I did. So do not read anything beyond just basic reviews or any like spoilers outside of what is on the inside description of this book. So all I'm gonna say is this book is about Casey. She is a recently widowed woman who is back at her family's like house on the lake, and she is drinking heavily. So if you have any kind of triggers for alcoholism or drinking or anything like that, do not read this book, because Casey always has a bourbon in her hand or wine or something. She's constantly drinking. You might even want to pour a glass of wine reading this book. I say all that to say she is an unreliable character. You don't know if what she's talking about is real or if she's drunk and hallucinating. So that's one part of it. Basically, Casey is out on her porch enjoying nature, sees a woman, which she thinks actually does end up being a woman, drowning in the middle of the lake, and she goes out and she saves her, and she finds out it is the woman who lives across the lake from her in this big beautiful house with windows where you can see straight into their home. And then this woman ends up missing. So Casey is determined to find out what happened to her, She's like questioning the husband, and there's two other people that live on the lake with her. One of them who's been there pretty much her whole life, and then this gentleman who is like a handyman who is living in one of the neighbors' homes, kind of working on stuff. So these characters interact with each other and things happen, and I really, really enjoyed it. There's a twist at the end, and that's what everyone is hating, but personally I loved that Riley Sager went there, and I'm all for it. So that is my thoughts on Riley Sager's Home Across the Lake. I think I'm gonna do, I don't know. I'm trying to remember if there's anything I didn't like about this book. I don't know. I might give this 5 stars. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. I don't think I have anything bad to say about it. It was enjoyable. Is it like, you know, literary, like gonna win a bunch of awards? No, of course not. But I thought it was a great thriller. Yeah, so unpopular opinion, but I really, really enjoyed this book. So, okay, so that was my month of July. Wide range of books. That's what I read, all over the place. Fantasy's always first, and then thrillers, horror, romance under that. And yeah, so that's what I got. I thank you guys as always for stopping by. Please hit that like and subscribe button if you are new. Thank you and welcome. I will see you guys next time. See ya.